So today on Life's Biggest Questions, we're asking, how did The Simpsons predict the global pandemic? In 1993, episode 21, season 4 of The Simpsons, titled Marge in Chains, would air. It would make households laugh all over the world, hitting approximately 10.3 million homes worldwide. Ranking as the second highest TV show on Fox that week, behind of course Beverly Hills 90210, no one thought much of the episode, which included a scene showing a flu from Japan making its way to Springfield through a shipping box, infecting the town. It was poking fun at the 1968 flu pandemic that claimed the lives of an estimated 1 million people worldwide. When speaking with The Hollywood Reporter, Bill Oakley, one of the episode's co-writers, explained, I quote, "It was just supposed to be a quick joke about how the flu got here. It was meant to be absurd that someone could cough into a box and the virus would survive for 6 to 8 weeks in the box. It is cartoonish. We intentionally made it cartoonish because we wanted it to be silly and not scary, and not carry any of these bad associations along with it, which is why the virus itself was acting like a cartoon character and behaving in extremely unrealistic ways." End quote. For those of you who haven't seen the episode or the clip, when a worker coughs into the shipping box, you actually see a green floating figure with red dots sporadically spread across it, resembling the flu, or a virus of some sort. The flu-like character sits inside the box after it's shipped, and then when Homer opens the box, the flu jumps onto his head and proceeds to, in a way, attack people by running at their heads and infecting them. Clearly it was a joke. At one point in the episode, an officer, Chief Wiggum, actually pulls out his gun and starts shooting at the virus. A joke. It's clearly a joke. Yet here we are 27 years later with people claiming that The Simpsons predicted this pandemic. Although one of the episode's co-writers literally came out saying he was inspired by a flu that he saw in news headlines as he was growing up, people will believe whatever they want to believe, and like-minded people just add fuel to the fire, creating a larger group of people who firmly believe this is the truth. To say that The Simpsons somehow predicted this pandemic would be false, because they didn't. They predicted that a virus or a flu spread across a town and infected people, but there are countless forms of media with that same premise. Movies, TV shows, novels, comics, video games, the list goes on and on. So to say The Simpsons predicted this current pandemic would be a stretch. They really didn't, as the idea is as old as time itself, it seems. Another interesting thing to look at, which Oakley also mentions, is history repeating itself. It's a known thing that history does repeat itself, so it was likely that we were going to eventually have another pandemic. He told The Hollywood Reporter, I quote, "It's mainly just coincidence because the episodes are so old that history repeats itself. Most of these episodes are based on things that happened in the 60s, 70s, or 80s that we knew about." End quote. Now that doesn't necessarily explain the Apple Watch or Donald Trump becoming president. Maybe they just got lucky with those. Maybe they do have writers from the future. Who knows? What I do know is that he's got a valid point, especially considering how they were writing these episodes in the 90s and 2000s. It'd be one thing if they created episodes and then whatever happened in the episode happened in real life days or weeks later. But to go back 27 years, it's a bit of a stretch. However, it's not just the TV show that is to blame. Not to say they're to blame at all. They're not feeding into this whole prediction stuff. If anything, they're going against it. The internet and social media, on the other hand, well, they just add fuel to the fire. If the idea of The Simpsons predicting the pandemic wasn't enough, people took things a step further and legitimately altered the episode itself to make it seem the show did predict it. An image showing what appears to be 4 frames from the episode started going around, showing the man coughing the flu into a box, the flu attacking Homer, the flu attacking Principal Skinner, and a shot of news anchor Kent Brockman reading the news about Corona. Of course, this image quickly went viral, and the theories and claims that The Simpsons once again predicted the future started filling up everyone's timeline and newsfeed. But it seems to have all been a hoax, as this was simply someone just having some fun. Although the images of the worker coughing, and both Homer and Skinner being attacked by the flu are from the episode Marge in Chains, the photo of Kent Brockman is from a totally different episode altogether, and it's also photoshopped. The original episode titled The Fool is Monty is from season 22, episode 6, and originally, Kent is talking about something called Apocalypse Meow. Someone decided to put the name of the virus over that instead, and then use the image to claim The Simpsons once again made a wild prediction. Now, I'm sure even after all the evidence I just presented, one may still believe The Simpsons did somehow predict our pandemic, and that's okay. Everyone is entitled to believe what they would like, and this is no different. But another very important factor to keep in mind here is that, as previously mentioned, the idea of a flu or virus infecting a town, community, or even the world isn't so far-fetched because it's happened before. Aside from the 1968 pandemic, also referred to as the Hong Kong flu, there's been the 1918 Spanish flu, the 1957 Asian flu, the 1997 bird flu, 2009 swine flu. The point I'm trying to make is that the flu has caused pandemics in the past. So if anything, The Simpsons were just copying history rather than predicting the future. Sorry to break some of your hearts. Aside from copying history, other people claim that with the amount of episodes The Simpsons have produced and the amount of jokes they've made, it was bound for them to predict something. Now this is an interesting theory because The Simpsons is the longest running scripted primetime TV show in the US, currently in its 31st season, and has over 675 episodes. Odds are there's going to be a joke or two within all of those episodes that seemingly seems like a prediction for the future. And although that is a possibility, sometimes their predictions are too accurate. But maybe they predict things we all know are bound to eventually happen and just don't think much about. A good example would be the three-eyed fish from Season 2, Episode 4, which aired in 1990. Blinky is the name of the fish Bart catches while fishing with Lisa near the power plant, and oddly enough, a fisherman in Argentina found a three-eyed fish in 2011 near a nuclear plant. Now, is it the writers predicting the future, or them simply making fun at the fact that mutated fish are a possibility if companies continue dumping nuclear waste in the water? In 1993, Season 5, Episode 10 aired, and depicted two showmen who worked with tigers, Gunter and Ernst, being attacked. Obviously reference to the famous magicians who worked with tigers at their Las Vegas residency, Siegfried and Roy. In 2003, when a tiger seemed to attack Roy on stage, people were quick to point to The Simpsons as predicting the attack. But it turns out the tiger actually didn't attack Roy just to attack him. In fact, there are mixed beliefs as to what happened, though the common consensus is that the tiger got distracted by an audience member breaking its routine. As the tiger started going toward the audience, Roy put himself between the two, which led to a struggle and the tiger dragging Roy off stage by the neck. The two magicians claimed the tiger was trying to protect Roy, who had fallen ill from blood pressure medication, but that seemed to just be a cover-up. Regardless, the point I'm making is that the tiger didn't attack the magicians the way the show depicted, and the most obvious explanation as to how they could predict this? They're working with 400-pound tigers, who don't necessarily belong on stage. Considering how my dog has bitten me before, it's no surprise that a tiger, which isn't a house pet, turned on its owner. It's a basic animal instinct, and this was the first time it happened in maybe the 30 or 40 years that they were performing. Alright guys, I know we've done videos about The Simpsons predicting things before, and in the past I've said there's no way they predicted anything, it's just that with so many episodes, some things are bound to overlap. This time around, I really am stumped. What are the odds that they not only predict people asking for a cure to an illness, which in this case can be the pandemic, and moments later in the same scene, show killer bees taking over Springfield, obviously in our case, the new murder hornets making headlines. In fact, a Simpsons writer is even admitting they must have predicted the future because this is wild, and we need to get to the bottom of this. Today on Life's Biggest Questions, we'll be asking, did the Simpsons really predict murder hornets? Welcome back to LBQ guys, I'm your host with all the answers, Jared Bronstein, and today we're once again talking about the Simpsons predicting the future. Now, there may be logical reasons aside from coincidence or the writers being from the future, which will help us understand how the Simpsons predict things in general. Make sure to stick around to the end of this one for some comment replies, and let me know below which Simpsons episode is your favorite. For now, let's get right into it. In the past, the Simpsons have been eerily accurate on some of their predictions. Now, I'm not so sure you'd call it a prediction, maybe a coincidence, or maybe just sheer luck. That being said, somehow, the show has aired episodes in the past where things that happen end up actually happening in real life, and for some reason they usually happen decades after the initial airing date of said episode. A good example would be President Donald Trump actually becoming president, or the time The Simpsons predicted the Amazon wildfires. Of course, more recently there was the viral photo showing Springfield's news anchor Kent Brockman freaking out about a breaking story called coronavirus, with 3 other photos showing a cartoon version of a disease or virus attacking Homer, Principal Skinner, and some factory workers. But it turns out that was actually a photoshopped image, and the photo of Kent Brockman was from a completely different episode. Of course, there was also the video of Kent Brockman reporting the news from his home due to a quarantine. British TV writer Scott Bryan then tweeted a side-by-side comparison of a BBC correspondent reporting the news from his own home. However, the reasons for their quarantine are entirely different. For us, there's the pandemic. In The Simpsons, a curfew was put in place for anyone under the age of 70 after Springfield Elementary was vandalized by Homer and his drunk friends. And one of the show's writers, Bill Oakley, publicly came out against the idea that the writing team at The Simpsons predicted anything from the future. Speaking specifically on the pandemic prediction, Oakley told The Hollywood Reporter, I quote, "It was just supposed to be a quick joke about how the flu got here. It was meant to be absurd that someone could cough into a box and the virus would survive for 6 to 8 weeks in the box. It is cartoonish. We intentionally made it cartoonish because we wanted it to be silly and not scary, and not carry any of these bad associations along with it, which is why the virus itself was acting like a cartoon character and behaving in extremely unrealistic ways." End quote. And regarding other pandemics, he simply said it was history repeating itself. I quote him saying, "It's mainly just coincidence because the episodes are so old that history repeats itself. Most of these episodes are based on things that happened in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that we knew about." End quote. And the episode he's referring to was aired in 1993. Episode 21, Season 4, titled Marge in Chains. We did an entire video about it, and I pretty much debunked how they didn't predict anything, and it was simply a mix of history repeating itself, coincidence, and the internet adding fuel to the fire by altering episodes to play into the narrative. But it seems now things have gotten much weirder. In this same episode, the people of Springfield can be seen asking the town's doctor for a cure to the illness, more specifically, the Osaka flu, which has taken over Springfield, and after a riot of people finally get Dr. Hibbert to come out onto his balcony to speak with the masses, he informs them there is no cure, telling the people, I quote, "The only cure is bed rest. Anything I give you will be a placebo." Immediately, a woman asks, "Where do we get these placebos?" Another man yells, "Maybe there's some in this truck." And before we go any further, let's talk about what's happened so far. The Simpsons predicted a flu from a factory in Asia and spread across a small town, infecting the majority of the population. It's gotten to the point that people are so desperate for a cure, they're not even being logical anymore. And thinking about our current pandemic, people are itching to end the lockdown and self-isolations. And some have gone as far as drinking or ingesting bleach in hopes it would help them. I mean, they're somewhat spot on. But again, as the show's writer explained, it was just history repeating itself. Again, growing up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, a lot of the writers spent most of their youth learning about the Asian flu, which took place from 1957 to 1958. So maybe that influenced them when making an episode where a virus from Asia takes over the town of Springfield. There's also been countless films, TV shows, comics, I mean, so many different types of art and media where a deadly disease or virus takes over. And as we know, viruses aren't necessarily curable, so the doctor telling the people of Springfield bed rest is the only real medicine, well, that's just basic science. But when the man says maybe there's some in this truck, and the group of people decide to shake the truck, eventually leading to a box falling out, well, I don't really know how to explain this one. If you've yet to see the viral video, the box in the truck that falls and breaks is labeled Danger, Killer Bees. Now, why is this important? Well, if you haven't heard, about a week ago an Asian hornet was spotted in Washington state. These hornets have been referred to in most headlines as murder hornets. That's because they're known to kill about 50 people a year on average in Japan alone, and are the size of your thumb. It's unclear how they got here, they come from Asia, but some experts believe they were deliberately released or transported to the US through international cargo and went unnoticed. I don't know which I'd prefer. Of course, considering how The Simpsons not only predicted the flu coming overseas and not having a cure, but in the same episode somehow predicted killer bees, well, I think it's obvious they did predict something here. And it seems one of the show's writers, Bill Oakley, is even admitting something here isn't adding up. Retweeting the clip, which currently has over 6 million views on Twitter, captioned it, "Okay, fine, I guess we did." Now, it seems Bill here is being sarcastic, obviously, and it seems there is always going to be a divide regarding The Simpsons predicting the future. Some believe they did, while others will cite history and just say it's sheer coincidence that some events that took place in the show decades ago are happening in the real world. If you really want to look at things from a logical standpoint, it seems this really is just a big coincidence, mixed with people wanting to believe The Simpsons predicted the future. A good example would be when Lisa had a smartwatch in 1995. The real smartwatch wouldn't be introduced to the world until 2013, but again, Lisa's smartwatch was an actual cell phone that folded into a watch. Yes, we have smartwatches, but the Jetsons also predicted we'd have flying cars and robot butlers. And if that does happen to be the case, say 100 years from now, maybe 1,000 years from now, the people living during those times will probably say the Jetsons predicted the future. At the end of the day, people get inspired creatively in many different ways. Clearly, some of the writers at The Simpsons were inspired by their personal past experiences and just general history in the world. Bringing it back to their latest prediction of the murder hornets, well, in the show they're considered killer bees. Still, very impressive for them to even come as close as they did. That being said, it does seem like one big coincidence, as the bees could have technically been anything. The point of the scene was to make fun of people for not listening to the medical professional, in this case Dr. Hibbert. After he tells them there's no cure, the group of people still look for one, completely disregarding the doctor after not liking the answer they heard. And that's where the bees come in, almost acting as an instant karma or instant regret for not listening simply because they didn't like the answer they heard. When the box of bees break, people start running all over trying to avoid being attacked. One guy goes as far as even grabbing one out of the air and swallowing it, still under the belief that this placebo may cure his illness. As you can see, the entire scene was made to poke fun at the ignorance of people during serious times. Much like a current pandemic, where healthcare professionals are encouraging people to stay home and practice social distancing, yet for some reason people are actually protesting that they still want to go back to work. Others think there's no virus at all. Now, I'm not here to discuss politics, but more so point out that The Simpsons based the scene not only on past historical events, but also how they assumed the majority of people would act under those circumstances. And it seems they were right about that too. So maybe The Simpsons really did predict the future. All joking aside, it seems there's always going to be claims that The Simpsons predicted the future. And I'm sure if people did their research and digging, we'd be able to find a ton of shows from the past that predicted the future. And that's because they're not predicting anything, but creating events based off of their personal past experiences or simply using their imagination. which again is influenced by things the writers have seen or heard in their own personal lives. So to wrap this one up, no, The Simpsons didn't predict the murder hornets, but they came pretty damn close to predicting our current scenario, which is an amazing coincidence in itself. In the early hours of October 2nd, 2020, President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, tweeted the following: "Tonight at Flotus and I tested positive for COVID-19. We will begin our quarantine and recovery process immediately. We will get through this together." Following the news, as you could imagine, Twitter started going crazy. To no surprise, there were some people wishing him well, but the majority of tweets, at least that I saw, were actually celebrating that he contracted the disease. Some called it karma, others said it was deserved, but one thing that everyone seemed to agree on was that The Simpsons somehow predicted Trump's death. Now, as of this recording, he's still alive, and I certainly hope he and Melania are able to recover, as I'd never wish sickness or death upon anyone. That being said, to no surprise, when a photo of what appears to be Trump laying in a coffin in a Simpsons episode started to go viral, people were absolutely shocked. But is it legit? Today on Life's Biggest Questions, we're asking, did The Simpsons predict Donald Trump's death? What's happening, guys? Welcome back to LBQ. I'm your host for this one, Jared Bronstein, and as you know, we've done our fair share of Did The Simpsons Predict videos over the years on our channel. It's no secret some of the writers are from the future, but this one may be a bit of a stretch. Stick around to the end of this video for some common replies, but for now, let's get right into it. So as we know, The Simpsons has appeared to predict things in the past, or so it seems. There were claims they predicted Trump would become president, but that turned out to be false. They also apparently predicted the virus, but that prediction also had an explanation of sorts. Simply put, the writers grew up in the 60s and 70s and used real-life experiences to write the show's plotlines, loosely based around said experiences. History is known to repeat itself, and this was put best by former Simpsons writer who got caught up in the idea he predicted our current pandemic. After making a joke they predicted the virus and murder hornets referring to a 1993 episode, Twitter went crazy, and Bill Oakley had to clarify how things actually went down. The writer explained, I quote, "I don't specifically remember which viruses had been in the news in the decade before we wrote it, but there were probably a few. The story was assigned to us by showrunners Mike Reiss and Al Jean, and they told us to read The Plague by Albert Camus, which is what the entire first act is based on." I would say in general, when people say The Simpsons has predicted something, it's just that we were satirizing real life events from years before, and because history keeps repeating, it just seems like we were predicting things. Now, bringing us back to The Simpsons predicting Trump's death, well, this theory actually dates back to 2017, so I think we have our answer, but still, there's a lot to cover, so let's keep it going. In February of 2017, an image of a Simpsons character of Donald Trump laying in a coffin started going viral on social media, and to add to its legitimacy, there was a Huffington Post watermark. But it turns out there was never an episode showing this, nor did the Huffington Post even ever make an article about it using that image. A video on the site, Bada Bun, which quickly amassed over 1 million views in a short period of time, is believed to be what caused the rumor and image to spread so quickly. But to no surprise, sources believe the doctored image first appeared on the absolute worst place on the internet, you guessed it, a 4chan thread. The video, which went viral, also used past Simpsons predictions to further cement their beliefs, but those two weren't all that accurate. An example being Trump waving to supporters as he goes down an escalator, which was in the show, but aired after he had announced he'd be running for president, not before. Still, this doesn't really matter all that much, as we know the internet truly is the Wild West, and once enough people believe something, well, until it's proven false, it must be true. And to no surprise, back in August of this year, the image of a Trump character in a coffin from an episode of The Simpsons started to go viral again, with people claiming the show predicts he's going to kick the bucket sometime soon. For whatever reason, as New York Times' Taylor Lorenz explained on Twitter, I quote, "If you've seen everyone on TikTok referencing August 27th and are wondering what's happening on August 27th, what is this? Let me quickly explain. It all started 5 days ago when this girl STFU Samantha posted this vid. The video just shows a girl saying, if you see this video, you've been chosen. Remember August 27th, it's an important date." Nowhere in the video does she mention Donald Trump or The Simpsons. Her video was actually a part of some troll, apparently, where people were just saying something was going to happen on August 27th, and if you see the video on your For You page, then you were the chosen one. These videos were posted back in July, and then a thread of tweets posting numerous TikTok videos explaining the thread, or trend or troll, whatever you'd call it. Lorenz explained in a tweet, I quote, "The main consensus now is that hashtag August 27th is a day to manifest whatever you want and it will come true." Okay, so now I see where this is going. One account, which was made in August of 2020, posted the photo and captioned it, "The Simpsons say Trump dies on August 27th, party time." Another one read, "Donald Trump is supposed to die tomorrow according to The Simpsons." Clearly what started off as a troll or a joke on TikTok turned into people manifesting things they want to happen on August 27th. This then led to people taking a joke, which turned into a positive thing, them manifesting, and turned that into them manifesting that Trump dies on August 27th. Or so it seems. And to add insult to injury, they decided to include a fake photo from a non-existent Simpsons episode showing showing him laying dead in a coffin. Now fast forward to where we are now, with the president and his wife tweeting that they have tested positive for the virus, and to no surprise, people are once again starting to make claims that The Simpsons predicted Trump's death. Again, at the time of this recording, he has tested positive for the virus and is showing mild symptoms, but nothing too alarming. As you can imagine, this is still a developing story, and as the days go on, to no surprise, his health will be closely monitored. Should he fall too ill to remain in office, Vice President Mike Pence would be next in line to take over as president for the rest of his term. Pence tested negative for the virus, however, as of now, it seems Trump is healthy enough to continue his duties as president. Of course, depending on how his health is over coming days, this is subject to change. However, one thing is certain, The Simpsons definitely did not predict Trump's death, and it seems the doctored image, which started on 4chan, just made for some great headlines. To wrap this one up, I'm just going to say I hope the president, his wife Melania, and all those affected by this awful disease have a speedy recovery and are able to return to full health as soon as possible. Regardless of politics or what you believe in, I don't think one should ever wish harm, sickness, or death upon others, and even if you disagree with everything Trump says and does, it doesn't make it right to wish for his death by any means. 2020 has been one hell of a year, and we unfortunately still got a few months left, so who knows what's bound to happen between the time of this recording and January 1st, 2021.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's gonna happen as we head into the new year, but odds are if a show can predict how the rest of the year is going to play out, it'd be The Simpsons.
Now we're not going to stand here and list off all the potential things The Simpsons have predicted are going to happen to close this year out.
Instead, we're going to look back at all the times The Simpsons did predict something accurately, as we're counting down the top 10 scary things The Simpsons actually predicted correct. Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm your host, Lindsay Ivan.
And I'm your other host, Jared Bronstein. If you guys want to see some similar videos, click the playlist button that just popped up on your screen, and of course stick around to the very end of this one for some comment replies for another video, but for now, let's get into it. Kicking our list off at number 10, we got the three-eyed fish. Known as Blinky in The Simpsons, the mutated fish gets discovered after Bart fishes it up near the Springfield power plant. This happens in season 2, episode 4, which aired back in 1990. Although we knew radioactive materials could cause some sort of mutations, we never really knew what it was capable of, aside from potentially turning a scientist into an angry green man. Fast forward to 2011 and there are headlines about an Argentinian man who caught a three-eyed fish while out on a fishing trip with some friends. It turns out the fish was caught in a reservoir where a power plant pumps hot water from their facility, and clearly the water gets polluted. Fisherman Julian Zumat said, I quote, "We were fishing and we got the surprise of getting this rare specimen. As it was dark at that time, we did not notice, but then you looked at him with a flashlight and saw that he had a third eye."
Coming in at number 9, we have President Donald Trump. Back in 2000, Simpson aired an episode titled Bart to the Future. Basically, in this episode, Bart gets a glimpse into what his future is going to be like. And in the episode, we see Donald Trump trying to run for president. Kind of. Then, what do you know? A couple of years later, he is the president. So a lot of fans are convinced that this episode predicted Trump's presidency. In the episode, during a cabinet meeting, Lisa says, and I quote, "We inherited quite the budget crunch from President Trump." I repeat, she said, President Trump. Now when asked about this, the writer Al Jean said that they were just looking for a celebrity that would be funny as the president.
Another writer said it was a reference to Trump attempting a run as a Reform Party candidate. Either way, this prediction is pretty creepy.
Pretty creepy.
Moving on to number 8, the horse meat scandal. If you live in the UK around 2013 or really just turned on the news, you likely heard about what was referred to as the biggest food fraud of the 21st century. Companies across numerous European countries were caught not only reselling moldy products, but a large majority of them were mislabeling their meats, with a lot of them including horse meat among other animals. Countries such as France, Iceland, England, Russia, Ireland, Sweden, and others were affected by this scandal, with supermarkets selling 100% beef products that included horse, pig, and as gross as it is, it's even crazier that The Simpsons somehow predicted this, as they aired an episode back in 1994 in which lunch lady Doris is feeding the kids mystery meat. More specifically, in season 5, episode 19, Doris serves the kid from a large container, reading assorted horse meat, which, I mean, considering how those lunch to-go packs specifically made for kids were one of the many affected products, it's kind of like they predicted this one, that kids are going to be eating horse meat.
Making our way down the list, number 7, we got The Victory. Back in 2008, Simpsons released an episode titled Boy Meets Curl. It was the 12th episode in season 21. Now in this episode, Marge and Homer both fall in love with curling. It results in them qualifying to compete in mixed doubles curling at the 2010 Winter Olympics. At the end of the episode, Marge leads their team to victory, beating Sweden. Well, in 2018, the US men's curling team beat Sweden and won the gold at the Olympics. So they predicted that not only would America win its first gold medal in curling, but that they would beat Sweden. Coincidence? I think not.
Bringing us to number 6, Siegfried and Roy Tiger Attack. For obvious reasons, the Simpsons version of Siegfried and Roy were called Gunter and Ernst. However, they too worked in a casino and had a magic show where they displayed white tigers. More specifically, the two worked with a tiger named Anastasia, and in the episode, the cat has a dream or a flashback about how she was captured by Gunther and Ernst with the use of a tranquilizer gun. While performing a show with the two handlers, she lashes out and attacks them both in front of a crowded audience. The episode aired back in 1993, and 10 years later, in 2003, a very similar sequence of events would play out. I can't say what caused the attack, as it's been disputed over the years. However, while performing one of their many shows, the late Roy Horn was attacked by a tiger on stage. All in all, he would survive the attack, but the show would officially come to an end with that performance being their final performance, and Horn would be partially paralyzed until his passing in 2020.
We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the NSA spying scandal. In 2013, former contractor for the CIA, Edward Snowden, revealed that the US National Security Agency, NSA, was collecting phone records of millions of Americans. Dun dun dun! So they were spying on us, well not us, I'm Canadian. So they were spying on them through their phone calls, and still are. But anyways, in the 2007 Simpsons movie, they literally predicted that this would happen. So in the movie, the Simpsons family flees Springfield and are hiding from the EPA. Well, in one scene, Marge warns her family to be careful because people could be listening in on their conversations. Then it cuts to a room filled with NSA agents listening in on a bunch of people's calls. It's like they knew from the beginning that we were being spied on by the government.
On to number 4, we got rigged voting machines. Now it is safe to say, as much as a prediction this one was, it's also technology that we're dealing with, so the fact they predicted it would malfunction isn't the craziest thought in the world. Still, the fact that the show seemingly predicted which part of the voting machine would be in favor for, or against, was certainly impressive. In a 2008 episode, Homer could be seen going to a voting booth and trying to vote for Democratic nominee Barack Obama over Republican John McCain. As he clicks Obama's name, the machine can be seen tallying a vote for McCain instead. During the 2012 election, in which Barack Obama would beat out Mitt Romney, there was a voting machine which saw people voting for Obama have their votes count toward Romney. There is even video footage of it happening, and to no surprise, people blame The Simpsons for this one too.
In our 3rd spot, we have the murder hornets. Remember a couple of months ago when we got the whole murder hornet scare? Like, they literally came out of nowhere, but then they were like less of an issue than we all thought it would be. Well, it's thought that The Simpsons predicted this. But what's freakier is how The Simpsons predicted that we would be invaded by murder hornets at the same time as a virus outbreak. So in the 1993 episode titled Marge in Chains, the town gets sick from the flu sent from Japan. In the same episode, the people of Springfield are rioting when they knock over a truck which breaks open a crate labeled Danger, Killer Bees. They literally got 2 predictions right in this one episode. I don't know how they do it, but they do.
Now at number 2, we got smartwatches. Sure, it's somewhat of a stretch, as much like the rigged voting machines, The Simpsons likely just decided to go in the direction of a trend. Given that we were advancing technology at such a quick rate, the idea of having a phone-like watch probably wasn't the most outlandish idea at the time. In fact, numerous films and TV shows such as James Bond and Inspector Gadget incorporated a watch that had capabilities beyond telling time. Whether it was a walkie-talkie, a weapon of sorts, or God knows what else, the idea of a gadget-like watch has been around for decades prior to the 1995 Simpsons episode. That being said, in the episode, a man named Hugh can be seen talking to the watch, in which it literally turns into a phone. Although we currently don't have such technology, the year of the smartwatch, which is 2014, introduced the Apple Watch, which was pretty much sold as an extension of your iPhone. It could pick up messages, give you app updates, and of course, make and receive calls. Seems like a good old prediction if you ask me, and that's a scary one at that.
And in our number 1 spot, we have the Higgs boson particle. In season 10, episode 2 of The Simpsons, Homer becomes inspired by the work of Thomas Edison. As a result, he tries to become an inventor. In one scene, we see Homer scribbling on a chalkboard. At the bottom, it reveals a math equation, which wasn't thought to be anything big. Until more than a decade later, when scientists discovered the Higgs boson particle, otherwise known as the God particle. That's when they realized that this particle was a lot similar to Homer's work on the chalkboard. How on earth did they do it? The writers must be super smart, or they have psychic powers. What do you guys think? Are the Simpsons writers psychic? Do they have access to insider information? Are they from the future?
Yes.
Let us know in the comments below.
Yes, technically.
Which one? Oh, all of it?
Just yes.
Just yes.
Well, so I was reading, I don't remember the guy's name right now. Dan something, I think, was one of the writers. He was pretty much saying, like, with the murder hornets and the flu.
Yeah.
They literally just write things that happened while they grew up, and then history just repeats itself, and people are like, oh my god, they predicted the future, and they're like, we didn't, okay.
True.
But yeah, so, I don't know. That could be also just be a cover though, I feel like.
That they're actually
from the future. Because they're not gonna admit it, they're not gonna tell us.
True.
The day is finally upon us. It is time for the 2020 presidential election. Boy, it seems like the run-up to this year's decision has taken forever, hasn't it? I suppose that's just another symptom of 2020. Joe Biden is aiming to dethrone current President Donald Trump, but Trump will not go down without a fight. It feels more uncertain than ever, with nobody able to make a confident prediction in either direction. So what better place to look for fortune-telling than America's favorite cartoon family / prediction machine, The Simpsons.
Over the years, especially within the last year or two, people all over the world have pointed to The Simpsons, more specifically their writers, for somehow predicting the future. More specifically, people cite episodes dating back to the 1990s in which situations the characters go through closely resemble things that have happened in our present day. To no surprise, one of the show's writers have spoken on this, but most people have continued on believing whatever they want.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm your host Keegan Hughes. Today we are asking, did The Simpsons predict the winner of the 2020 presidential election?
I'm your other host, Jared Bronstein, and guys, just do us a huge favor, just do me a huge one, just smash that like button real quick as hard as you can, otherwise The Simpsons will predict your last day on Earth. And who wants to know that? That's kind of scary. So let us know in the comments down below your favorite Simpsons characters before we get into this one, but for now, we gotta get into it. So now we're getting into it, so I hope you let us know by now. As we know, over the years, people have claimed The Simpsons are responsible for predicting the future one way or another. Time and time again, year after year, there appears to be claims that they either predicted Trump's presidency or current pandemic, murder hornets, the list goes on. And although some of these episodes have appeared to be incredibly accurate in predicting the future, the writers behind the episodes have made it clear they're not fortune tellers. But maybe that's just what they want us to think. On a more serious note, one of the show's writers, Bill Oakley, made it pretty clear that when they write the show, they tend to satirically write about things that have happened in the past, and because history repeats itself, it seems as if they're fortune tellers. Still, some people are sold on the idea that the writers know something us regular folks don't, and to no surprise, a lot of fans of the show and people just anxiously awaiting the results of our current election are currently looking through old Simpsons episodes to find out any clues or hints as to how things could potentially play out. I mean, after all, they did predict the faulty voting machines back in a 2008 episode, which came to fruition during the 2012 election, so weird.
Recently, The Simpsons premiered an episode with a whole lot to say about the upcoming election. They've never shied away from politics, so it makes sense that they're getting their 5 cents in before the votes are counted. Interestingly enough, it was part of their annual Halloween special known as the Treehouse of Horror. Feels like we're living in a horror world lately, doesn't it? Maybe that's just me. Also, it was just Halloween. Moving along, in this episode we see Homer hanging out in a voting booth mulling over his options. As he does so, Lisa pokes her head in and attempts to sway him away from voting for Donald Trump. The way she sees it, he is unfit to be re-elected, which depending on your point of view is pretty valid. Lisa's little reminder is followed by a scrolling list of 50 reasons that Donald Trump shouldn't be re-elected, ranging from putting children in cages, showing top secret documents at Mar-a-Lago, refusing to release his tax returns, pulling the US out of a climate agreement, appointing Betsy DeVos, calling third world countries holes, saying he grabbed someone by the leaking classified information, and more. There are 50 reasons folks at The Simpsons believe that Trump is unfit to be re-elected, and some more that they left off, saying that they didn't even include the worst one. Needless to say, they're attempting to sway the adult cartoon-watching populace away from another 4 years of Donald Trump. Could this be considered a prediction? Well, not really, but by coming out so strongly against the president incumbent, they're hoping to push more votes towards the Democrats. Will this strategy work? Well, it's not really likely that a last-minute list on a once popular television show will really change anyone's minds. People who didn't like Trump before they saw this episode probably still won't like Trump, and people who supported Trump prior to viewing this long list will probably see it as a bunch of cheap shots and not be swayed in any way. Maybe by saying that they haven't said the worst one, the writers are predicting that Trump will somehow one-up himself once again. Incredible to think about.
Now, when looking at some of Simpsons' past predictions, such as the faulty voting machines and even one as specific as Team USA beating Sweden in curling at the Olympics, because really, who in a million years would even think about that? You realize sometimes they really are spot on. Coincidence? Or maybe they're from the future? It's possible that the answer is both, but there's also a very important factor when looking at a handful of these predictions. They never happened in the first place. For example, there was a photo of Donald Trump laying in a coffin from an apparent Simpsons episode in which everyone thought they predicted his death. Turns out that scene was never in an episode, and instead some fan art started going viral showing Trump in a coffin, which led people to believe the Simpsons somehow predicted he was going to die relatively soon. It's important to mention that picture went viral right around the time that he announced he had COVID. Their prediction of our current pandemic is also a little iffy, as yes, they made an episode in which a flu infects people all over Springfield, and hornets also wreak havoc. But the box holding the hornets in the episode definitely didn't say murder hornets, and the image of Kent Brockman, the Simpsons local news anchor, reading about the coronavirus from an episode back in 1993 was also altered. Originally showed a dinosaur with a thermometer, which read Osaka flu. Someone covered that image to make it appear to be a story about cats, which was then interrupted about breaking news regarding coronavirus. What I'm getting at is, if you see any predictions regarding the election, fact check, because who knows if The Simpsons actually even made whatever you're sourcing.
Now, after all these years of making predictions, one has to wonder if the folks over at The Simpsons believe that they have some sort of higher power. It's a little far-fetched, but wouldn't you think that you had some hand in predicting the future if it happened so many times? Maybe you'd remain skeptical, but there would always be that thought at the back of your head, wondering if these predictions were possible. So if this is the case, maybe some of the folks over at The Simpsons have actually decided to try and force some predictions to come true. They're definitely self-aware at this point, with little nods to their predictive prowess in the past. So what if they do their best to manifest the kind of future they want? Kinda like witchcraft, but instead of using magic, they're using sitcom scripts. Not quite as interesting, but maybe just as effective. They haven't specifically done it yet, especially related to the 2020 election, but they could be cooking up some new content to force the future into the shape they desire. So, what do you think? Have they predicted this year's winner?
I think regardless of what happens, it's gonna just be a nightmare, so no.
No, yeah, no.
I mean,
we haven't had any like US descending into total madness Simpson episodes yet, so they really didn't.
You could look at any Treehouse of Horror though, and it's like that is literally
fair, yeah.
gonna be
zombies are coming back.
Something's gonna happen.
You know,
I don't know what, but something.
The shinning, people become psychic, and you know, go crazy.
I don't know. Just, you know, in case you guys are confused, no, they did not predict the election. But again, who knows? Maybe somebody will go back to an episode from like 2006 and be like, oh, there was this one thing that kind of connects to this, which makes me think this happened. And then people are going to be like, yeah, they predicted it.
Wow. Yeah, I could see that. Absolutely.
That's like the Trump episode of him being president. It was literally just a clip of him from the year 2000 waving people on an elevator.
It's a little goofy joke.
Yeah, and it was like from Trump Hotel or something like that. And then people just doctored it to make it look like it was presidency.
Yeah.
And then everyone believed it was true. So I'm going to say what's going to happen is after we find out the results, someone's going to do that, and then it's going to go viral, and everyone's going to be like, how did we miss this?
There's somebody in their basement right now
100%.
just marathoning The Simpsons at 4 times speed, just like
100%.
hoping they find something.
There's somebody that literally just changed 2 episodes to be the results of either whichever one happens, and then they're just gonna start spreading out like crazy.
They've got like 10 screens, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
like with all possible.
They have 2 templates,
predictions,
and they just gonna insert the name of who wins.
As soon as it happens, doom, they hit that button.
It's like comic book guy. That's who it's gonna be too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's sitting there just
He's ready. He's in his basement eating a breakfast burrito. Delicious.
Worst election
Worst election ever.
I wish I had a ponytail like him, you know, like a greasy long ponytail with no head top. It'd be nice.
Hey,
maybe someday.
My hair's getting long. I could do it one day, maybe.
Maybe the stress from the election will finally cause my hair to fall out. It'll be good. You gonna watch the election? You gonna keep up to date?
Yeah, I'll probably watch it. Yeah, I'll watch it. Yeah.
I'm not. I'm playing D&D tonight.
Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. Did The Simpsons predict the 2024 president election? Yes. And you're never going to believe who they predicted winning it all. We're a week removed from the election, and although it seems evident that Joe Biden is going to be the next president of the United States, technically nothing is official, especially with President Trump challenging all the votes. Still, it seems the writing is on the wall, so now we're setting our sights to the 2024 election. And what better way to try and determine who is going to win the next election than going through old Simpsons episodes and looking for hints or clues which may or may not give us the answers we're looking for. To no surprise, it seems yet again the Simpsons have predicted the future decades before it even happened. Now, considering how we're 4 years out from the next election, there's no way to confirm nor deny if the prediction is all that accurate until it actually happens. That being said, as of this recording, if what the media is saying turns out to be true, well, the Simpsons will be incredibly spot on with their prediction. Welcome back to LBQ, guys. Make sure you guys smash that like button. It really helps the channel out. But for now, we gotta get to the bottom of this one, so let's get right back into it. On March 19th, the year 2000, the episode Bart to the Future aired on Fox. It was the 17th episode of the 11th season of the show, and it's one of the episodes that, following Trump's bid for presidency, started to get a lot of attention. In the episode, a comment is made claiming that former President Trump caused a budget crisis that Lisa, the new president of the country, needs to deal with. Of course, this episode is one of the many that led to people claiming Simpsons writers are from the future. But it turns out the episode was created the same year Trump ran for president as an independent party. One of the show's writers, Dan Greeny, told The Hollywood Reporter, I quote, "It was a warning to America, and that just seemed like the logical last step before hitting rock bottom. It was pitched because it was consistent with the vision of America going insane." No one could have predicted that 16 years later, Trump would not only run, but would actually win the bid for presidential candidate with the Republican Party. Beyond that, no one thought he was actually going to win. Yet 4 years later, and here we are with Trump challenging the current vote count in hopes of staying in office for a second consecutive term. So how does The Simpsons come into play with all of this? Well, it seems evident that they somehow, some way knew Trump was going to be running for president in 2024 and will actually end up winning. The episode doesn't show him winning the election, but there is a very specific line that alludes to the fact that President Trump does win the election in 2024. The episode Bark to the Future takes place in the year 2030, and given that Lisa is president, that would mean that she won the election in 2028. As Bart is visiting his sister in the White House, you could overhear her talking with her associates as she says, I quote, "As you know, we've inherited quite the budget crunch from President Trump." Given that Lisa would have won in 2028 and is talking about the budget crunch she inherited from the previous president in Trump, that would mean that he won the 2024 election and left Lisa with a crumbling economy. I know it probably sounds absolutely insane, but when you do the math and really break it down, it seems once again The Simpsons have predicted the future decades before it even happened. Now this prediction is yet to be determined, as we need to wait and see how things play out. As of now, if Trump were to officially concede and accept his loss in the election, he'd be able to run again in 2024, and given the fact that he has experience, which he didn't have prior to his first election, his chances of winning would likely be much higher. The show didn't predict who he would be running against, nor which party he'd be running for, but odds are if the past and present are any indication of the future, the man would remain Republican. So how likely is it that Trump actually does run for president in the 2024 election? Again, assuming he does officially lose to unofficial President-elect Joe Biden, it seems more likely than not. Multiple media outlets have reported that Donald Trump is already discussing a campaign for the 2024 election, a sign that he not only realizes but has accepted defeat. Although he's yet to outright do so, at least publicly, sources close to the current president are claiming he's seriously considering another run, especially given the fact that he feels the election is quite literally being stolen from him due to fraudulent voting. However, another very interesting point that needs to be highlighted is that The Simpsons appeared to not only predict the 2024 election, but also predicted the 2020 election. More specifically, users took to Twitter, sharing an image of the Electoral College from a previous Simpsons episode, comparing it to the one from our most recent election. At first glance, the cartoons version, which is from an episode that aired in 2012, seems almost identical to the current Electoral College outcome. It seems the only state which the show got wrong was Arizona, which they had red instead of blue. All the other states appear to be identical to how things played out in the most recent election. But upon further examination, it seems the show got a few of the states wrong. Ohio and Virginia were red states in the election. However, they appear to be blue in the show. Still, considering how they got almost all the Electoral College votes right, at least the majority vote, it is incredibly impressive. And to no surprise, people on Twitter were freaking out, with one person even asking The Simpsons to predict the rest of their life. Going back to Trump and the 2024 election, assuming that he does concede sooner than later and congratulates Biden on his victory, I wouldn't be all that surprised if Donald Trump eyes a return to the White House in the next election. Given how his administration is pushing for recounts in numerous states and are under the impression that the election is being stolen from them, to no surprise, they'll want to redeem themselves any way possible. It's also important to note that Trump and Biden received more votes in a presidential election than any other candidate. Although Biden holds the record with the most votes, both men broke the previous record, with Trump clocking in just under 71.5 million votes and Biden receiving over 76 million. And as crazy as it seems for Trump to run again, given the support he received from the American people, it seems quite evident that the Republican Party would be more than willing to nominate him to lead their party once again. And aside from getting the confidence of the American people, the Republican Party may see Trump as their only option to win, especially considering the fact that potential 2024 GOP candidates have been quiet regarding the fraudulent voting claims currently being argued. Taking to Twitter, Donald Trump Jr. tweeted out, "The total lack of action from virtually all of the 2024 GOP hopefuls is pretty amazing. They have a perfect platform to show that they're willing and able to fight, but they will cower to the media mob instead. Don't worry, @real Donald Trump will fight and they could watch as usual." Brad Parscale, Trump's former campaign manager, also chimed in regarding the fraud election drama, tweeting out, I quote, "If you want to win in 2024 as a Republican, I would probably start saying something, just saying." Clearly, if the American people feel the same way, or at the very least feel that Trump is one of the few politicians that are willing to stick it to the man, if you will, while other Republicans cower, then his chances of winning increase tenfold. This would also affect the likelihood of the Republican Party having faith in another candidate beating the Democratic nominee, especially in assuming it's either Biden or his VP Kamala Harris running for re-election. To put it in simple terms, regardless of what the Republican Party thinks, if the American people are under the impression that Trump is fighting a fraudulent vote system, while his peers in the Republican Party, who are potentially eyeing a 2024 nomination, sit back and don't fight with him, they likely won't have much confidence in said potential nominees running the country. This would just give Trump's chances of a 2024 bid to become even more likely. And quite Quite recently, Trump's former White House Chief of Staff, Mickey Mulvaney, said, "I would absolutely expect the president to stay involved in politics and would absolutely put him on the short list of people who are likely to run in 2024. Now, I know Mick isn't a writer for The Simpsons, so we can't take what he said as the absolute truth, but odds are the man knows more than the average person, so I think it's safe to say all signs are pointing to Trump running again for president in 2024. So to wrap things up, did The Simpsons predict the 2024 president election? Yes, they did. Of course, we're gonna have to wait 4 years to determine if that prediction even comes true. But a good indication will come around 2022 when people will start to gear up for the next election. If President Trump does concede and goes on to run for president again in 2024, we may need to start looking at every episode of The Simpsons in hopes of planning better for the future. Until then though, let's continue just enjoying it for the great comedy it provides us on a weekly basis. Now as always guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one down below. Do you think it's all a coincidence, or are The Simpsons really onto something? Is Trump going to run again in 2024, or is he done with politics after this election, regardless of the outcome?
The Simpsons have accurately predicted a number of things, from Donald Trump being president, to the plot twist ending in Game of Thrones, to the NSA's spying scandal, to even COVID-19. And now, the results of the 2020 election. It seems like they know what's gonna happen in the future. How do they do it? That's the question everyone wants to know. And I'll be discussing it today only on Life's Biggest Questions. Recently, fans have been recirculating a Simpsons short from 2012, claiming that it shows just how the election played out. The clip is from a Fox special called Mr. Burns Endorses Romney, and it was for the 2012 presidential election. It's only a minute and 50 seconds long, but in it, we see Mr. Burns in front of a map, showing the red and blue states for the election. What's freaky is that they look very similar to the 2020 Biden and Trump electoral map. I mean, at first glance, it looks identical, meaning The Simpsons somehow predicted the outcome of each state. But the only thing they got wrong was Arizona, which they had as red instead of blue. Still, how did they manage to pretty much get the exact election results? Keep in mind, the episode is 8 years old. But before I go any further, I'm just gonna ask you to hit that thumbs up button, spread the love, give us a like, it just really helps us out. So, previously The Simpsons seemed to have predicted Trump's presidency. Back in 2000, The Simpsons aired an episode titled Bart to the Future. Basically, in this episode, Bart gets a glimpse into the future to see what it's gonna be like for him and his family. In the episode, we see that Lisa Simpson is the president and is attempting to rebuild the economy after Donald Trump was president. In the episode, she says, "We inherited quite the budget crunch from President Trump." I repeat, she said, President Trump. Then when Trump became president, it shocked fans all over the world. But two writers for The Simpsons actually came forward to admit how they predicted this. One writer, Dan Greeny, told The Hollywood Reporter, and I quote, "It was a warning to America," and that just seemed like the logical last stop before hitting bottom. It was pitched because it was consistent with the vision of America going insane. He continued on saying, "What we needed was for Lisa to have problems beyond her fixing, that everything went as bad as it possibly could, and that's why we had Trump be president before her." But they didn't actually expect Trump to win. Another writer, Al Jean, said that they picked Trump because they were just looking for a celebrity that would be funny as the president. And during the time the episode was written, Trump was attempting to run as a Reform Party candidate, which you would never expect. So they ran with the idea of Trump being president. On top of that, Trump had already said back then that he would consider running for office at some point. So their prediction wasn't just based off of nothing. So now, how did they predict the outcome of the 2020 election? Some believe that The Simpsons writers are psychics or time travelers from the future, and they are creating these episodes to warn us of upcoming events. But in reality, they are just very knowledgeable people that do their research. I mean, if you look at the trends over the years during past elections, you can see which states tend to be those colors. States that are blue and states that are red are historically often going to be those colors. So all they had to do was look back at past elections. A lot of Twitter users pointed this out as well. One person tweeted, "You mean The Simpsons predicted that the states that usually vote blue would vote blue, and the states that usually vote red were projected to vote red? Let me act shocked." Another user tweeted, "I mean, it's pretty simple to predict sometimes which of them are liberal or conservative states. I don't blame The Simpsons for doing good research." So no, The Simpsons writers don't have any more insight into the future than we all have. Just a lot of research goes into each episode. Plus, they probably wanted to make the map as accurate as possible. It wouldn't make sense if the map was just way off. So in a way, they weren't even trying to make a prediction. They were just trying to be representative of the real world and the states. Al Jean also said in another interview, and I quote, "If you make enough predictions, then 10% will turn out to be right." So there you have it. The Simpsons episodes are filled with crazy things. Not everything is going to come true. Keep in mind they have over 600 episodes. Yeah, something they say or do is bound to come true. But if we actually look at it in a bigger picture, I would say that more Simpsons predictions have been wrong than right. It's just when something does turn out right, everyone hypes it out of proportion. Meanwhile, the writers just got lucky. At this time, we are analyzing the Simpsons episodes more and more. We are now purposely looking for things that have come true, and by doing so, we make it seem like they're psychics. But as you know from the writers, they look at trends, they see what's going on in the world and just kinda guess the outcome. If it turns out wrong, no one cares and everyone's like, oh yeah, well it's just a cartoon. But if it turns out right, everyone goes into a frenzy saying the Simpsons are psychic. For example, let's take a look at the murder hornets. Everyone was freaking out saying that the Simpsons predicted these insects. So in the 1993 episode titled Marge in Chains, the town gets sick from the flu sent from Japan. In the same episode, the town is rioting and end up knocking over a truck, which breaks open a crate labeled "Danger Killer Bees." People were then quickly to say that these killer bees are the murder hornets. That's just a coincidence. And the murder hornets aren't even deadly like the bees in the show. You can see how they take one thing and then try to apply it to real life events. In the end, we're the ones that are making all these predictions come true. Let's look at another example. It's thought that The Simpsons also predicted smartwatches. In a 1995 episode titled Lisa's Wedding, again, we jump forward to the future, and Lisa's fiance Hugh can be seen talking to his watch, which turns into a phone. Well, eventually Apple released the Apple Watch, which acts like a phone. You know, you could message people on it, you can make and receive phone calls on it. But are we all gonna forget about Inspector Gadget? In the 1983 show, we see Inspector Gadget using a smartwatch, way before The Simpsons did it. And James Bond was also known to have a watch that had capabilities beyond telling time. Inspector Gadget also predicted FaceTime/video calls before The Simpsons did it in that same episode. So again, it's all subjective. We just freak ourselves out when we see it on The Simpsons. As much as we want to believe that The Simpsons hold some kind of power, they admitted themselves that they don't. Sometimes luck is on their side. Other times they research trends to see what's likely to come true, which they did in this case for the election map. Again, this map came true for this election, not the last election. Honestly, if it didn't come true this time around, maybe like 10 or so years from now, it would have. And like fans noticed, it's not that shocking that they colored the states the way that they were, because historically, that's the party they tend to vote for. So in the end, The Simpsons predicting the election results isn't that shocking. As they always say, history repeats itself. And The Simpsons made an educated guess based on it. I mean, it's not as fun as saying they are psychic, but it will do.